Lamelo, lovely cushion header. But Gerrard, you beauty! Balotelli, Aguero! I swear you'll never see anything like this ever again. Here he is again. Here he is again. It's astonishing. It's absolutely world class.
So for me, this is episode number 5 for Coaches Don't Play podcast. I'm joined by Mitch Fitzpatrick of the Halftime Community podcast. How are you doing, mate?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure, mate. Sorry. As someone who I'm from England, and basketball isn't the main sport over here. I've only just getting into it. But I think sort of use this podcast for you to sort of not teach me as such, but to sort of show me the ropes and just talk about stuff that's going on in the NBA.
Yeah, sure thing.
So start off. So do you have a team that you support?
You know, I'm kind of a fan of the league as a whole. The city where I'm from, Kansas City, Missouri, originally, and now I live in St. Louis, Missouri. For the United States listeners, we've never had an NBA team.
Yeah.
Well, they did, but that was far before my time. So since I've been growing up, I just really love the game. So I more followed players, and then as the players move around a lot more, it's become more of a players' league, I would say.
Yeah, no, that makes sense because there's not been one sort of team you can sort of you can go to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I know in America, I know that college and like university sport is compared to England. That is a whole different world. I know, because if I play for my college football team or soccer, it's quite small. But what I've seen over there, it's massive. It's like televised, and there's so many fans. Yeah. Why is that?
Yeah, I think it's just a lot of it is just loyalty, regional loyalty, and then obviously, as you mentioned, with the rise of ESPN and televising all the games, it used to be, just the big market games were on TV. So you'd have your big conferences like the Big 12, Big East, SEC, college basketball would be on TV, and they'd have 1 or 2 games a week, probably on Saturday or Sunday or maybe on Monday night. And now it's gotten to the point where no matter what college you really follow, even if it's a tiny college and a tiny conference, you can find their games televised on some ESPN or Fox Sports entity channel. So it's really grown, and it's just fanaticism.
Yeah, I mean, for someone who's looking over from the outside, it's like a massive. Just the difference is just mental because for here you don't really get you get some like big events at school level, like college and university, where it might be a cup final for normally like rugby or football over here. But it's not really like if I turn on like Sky Sports, I don't really see anything to do with like college and stuff. But I've seen like I've been just on like one Saturday Sunday I've been watching some like there was like college basketball and college baseball. And for me, it's just like a world of its own. It's so weird to look at.
Yeah, it's definitely different, and I could see that being an adjustment. But yeah, I would say that's been pretty recent. The rise of I follow Iowa State, which is kind of a smaller school. They're not small, but they're in a big conference, but they're not one of the blue blood teams.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I'm looking for an Iowa State game, I can turn on one of the ESPN channels at any time now, and usually they're on there, and that wasn't the case in the past. So no matter what team you follow, you can really watch them at some level.
Did you so for sports, did you play at a high level, or were you just sort of more of a fan?
No, I would say I'm more of a fan. I actually joined the military right out of high school, so I didn't really take sports past high school at all, but I still enjoy it. Play rec leagues now and then. Haven't really this past year with COVID-19 and
Yeah.
everything, but I eventually will get back into that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. For over here, like everything's stopped. Obviously, the professional sports are going on, but like if I want to go play football, I know a lot of because I've seen does it different between states with the rules that with COVID?
Yeah, it's completely different depending on what part of the country you're in. So some states are really lax about it. Some states are super strict about it. It's kind of easing up now across the country a little bit, but
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Now moving on to basketball, I sort of was looking. I think it was late at night, and I was bored, and I found a stream to watch some basketball. I thought I'd give it a go because I played NBA. I think 2K20 for free when it was on Xbox, and I enjoyed it. So it's always been in the background. But and then I watched the Dallas Mavericks, and then I just sort of saw Luka Doncic, and I just sort of, I wouldn't say fell in love, but I just loved the way he played, and I just got excited watching like another sport. And I've sort of, I don't want to call myself a fan of Dallas because I feel like I don't know enough, and I haven't watched enough to sort of call myself a fan, because I don't want to like offend actual fans of the Mavs, but I do like look out for them, and I follow them when I can. I was going to watch the game last night, but for me that was on at 3 a.m. If it was like a 1 o'clock game, I might have given it a go, but it is quite hard to support a team from where I am. But I know that's for some football fans, but for some soccer fans over there, for them supporting a Premier League team in football, it's sort of the same. They've got to stay up till like early in the morning.
Yeah. I'm kind of the same way. It's funny that you mentioned that with Premier League soccer. I go in and out on it. You know, I'll catch a game here and there, but I'm not super up to date on all the transfers and all that sort of thing. I don't really play FIFA or any video games like that, so I can't really keep up to date with the transfers, but there's players that I like over there. I know Lukaku, I don't think he's in the Premier League anymore, but I really enjoyed watching him. So it's more of, like you mentioned, you see a player that you like, either in the World Cup or you just see him in the Premier League because the games are on early here. So I'll maybe catch one early in the morning. I'll see a player, I'll be like, wow, I really like the way that guy plays soccer or football.
Yeah.
Just,
do you
kind of
look at a team? When you do you sort of look out for a team in the Prem?
You know, a few years ago, I really liked watching. Gosh, I can't even think of it. Not Chelsea. It had Tim Howard was the goalkeeper. Everton, yes. They had Ross Barkley and Tim Howard, and some players I really liked watching on there. I really liked the way Ross Barkley was just kind of like a point guard in basketball. He didn't always have to score, but he played the midfield really well.
Yeah.
He could defend a little and he could pass and kind of get everybody involved.
Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from now, but do you as someone looking in, I sort of feel like most Americans would sort of go towards American players, like you said, Tim Howard, and I wouldn't be surprised if some like Christian Pulisic for Chelsea. I think Weston McKennie for Juventus, Sergio Dest for Barcelona. I can understand, but I know a lot of English people get annoyed that some American might support like a big Premier League team, and then they call them like plastic fans and stuff like that. And I was a little worried going into basketball. I didn't wanna pick. Who's at the top? Well, I picked them, and because they win every week. When I started looking for Dallas, I think they weren't doing too good. We've been doing better recently, but I think they were the first 2 games I watched they lost. But just seeing like Doncic and Porzingis, I just need to knowing the players, I need to get a little bit better at as well.
Yeah, Dallas is kind of one of those teams where they have a really transcendent player, obviously, and a guy that could be, an all-time player in Luka Doncic. And he's really young still, so they're trying to build around him. They're not quite ready to contend yet, I would say, for a championship, but they're definitely one of those teams looking to build for the future. And when you have one player like that, it can really make a difference in basketball.
Yeah, I heard. I saw some rumors. Porzingis might be going to Golden State. Some trade offers. What's that? What do you know about that?
Yeah, I mean, there was some rumors around it. The owner, Mark Cuban, kind of shot those down pretty quickly, but you never know with those sort of things. Are they just shooting it down because they don't want it to get out in the media, or are they shooting it down because there's no truth to it? Especially with the NBA nowadays, it's become so social media driven. There's so many reporters and reports and rumors out there all the time for every team, really. Any star player, with player movement being so crazy right now. Players switch teams almost every 2 years, it seems like. So there's always a rumor going around. If a superstar player isn't winning at the time, it's like trade rumor city all the time.
Yeah. Do you look out for a certain player then? Do you have, at the moment, do you go, this player, like, just this player is my favourite?
Yeah, I don't know how much you've been keeping up with this current season and the player movement and everything, but the Brooklyn Nets and James Harden, he got traded to the Brooklyn Nets earlier in the season.
Yeah.
That was really, really contentious with NBA fans because, as soon as a team gets three superstars on the same team, it's automatically, everybody says it's not fair, and people start going the other way on it, like, hating on it, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I really like James Harden. I've always liked his game, not so much off the court. He's a little bit of a malcontent off the court, but on the court, just like Luka Doncic, who you mentioned, he's super under control all the time. He's not the fastest player on the court. He's not necessarily the most skilled player on the court all the time, but he's always in control of the game. He can pass, he can shoot, he can score from anywhere. So I really like watching the Nets this year, James Harden. I think it's always good practice when you see really good teams like that. I know it's easy to hate on them because you want them to lose because they're so stacked with talent, but it's always just you want to be in the moment. Try to be in the moment and just enjoy, three great players on the same team playing basketball.
Yeah, I was sort of if we're going to like basketball and football, I thought Nets would be sort of like the Manchester City. Because it is sort of a team that has a like, it's different because obviously in there's less players on a team starting, but like Manchester City have a lot of star players that people would look to, and people who Manchester City divide a lot of opinion because they spend like 50 million pounds on the player who might not start every game, and for teams lower down, that is stupid. But I mean, 20 years ago, if you spent 50 million pounds, you're getting the best player in the world. And now, if you spend 50 mil, you might get a decent midfielder. It's football's changing. I think all sport is sort of changing in their own ways. I know. I was watching a video about basketball and how defensively things have gotten a lot worse.
Yes and no. I think a lot of that is due to the offense being so good now. It's just the kids that come out of high school are a million times more prepared for the next level, whether that be college or now some of the players are going overseas straight out of high school for a year and then coming to the NBA, or they're going to what's called the G League, which is like a development league, like a AAA team over. So they'll do that for a year before they're eligible for the NBA. So just coming out of high school and coming out of junior high, middle school even, kids are just so skilled. It's really hard if you just watch basketball from the 90s. Certain players, obviously Michael Jordan's really the greatest of all time, but players outside of that, just role players, it's just hard to compare because they wouldn't be able to cut it in today's NBA, really, with how skilled the players are.
Why do you think that is because of then? Do you think that's because of like the players, that their role models have just got better at like offensively than defensively?
Yeah, that's a lot to do with it. The NBA, as a whole, if you just look at the stats over time, the 3-point shot, since it was introduced, even guys that are known as legendary shooters like Larry Bird,
Yeah.
he wasn't really shooting that many threes if you actually look at the stats. And then you've got guys today that are 7 feet tall that are shooting more threes than Larry Bird ever shot in his career. So it's just the game's evolved over time.
Yeah.
Everybody can shoot now. Everybody can dribble a little bit. It used to be Shaquille O'Neal, the back to the basket center. You give it to
Yes.
Shaq because he's a giant human being down there and he'll just get you a bucket. There's really not players like that anymore. Joel Embiid is kind of like that, but
Yeah.
he still shoots as well. So the game has just changed over time. Everybody can shoot. Everybody can dribble now.
Would you say it's changed for the better, or do you not like that approach?
Yeah, honestly, I like the NBA as it is now. It's more free flowing. If whoever grabs the rebound can bring it up the court if need be.
Yeah.
Big guys are skilled, so it's more fun to watch for me. There are smaller things within the rules of the game that have kind of slowed the game down towards the end a little bit, like replay. I
Yeah.
know they've been experimenting with that in soccer and
Yeah.
football as well. So yeah, replay is definitely something they need to work on at the end of games because it really can kill the flow of the game.
Yeah.
But overall, I really like the way it is now.
Yeah, I mean, in the Prem, VAR is what we call it. Is divides opinion, because at the start I was for it because like offsides, handballs were not getting looked at, and for a fan, I'm a fan of Liverpool, and last season we won the Premier League for the first time in 20 odd years. And Liverpool are a top four club. We are always up there. We have been recently, and people have been saying that replays are favouring us, and it's people going like, oh well, the referees favour such team because of history, and even this season in the Prem, the handball issue has been like changed about 4 times, because some saying, well, if it hits a certain part of the hand, it's handball, but if it hits this certain part of the hand, it's not handball, and it's an absolute shambles at the moment. But because I think technology in sports is very very new, and it's in the developing years.
Yeah, yeah. Just like you mentioned, it's good to have replay for certain things, but it can definitely go too far when you're looking at, a personal foul within the last 5 minutes of a basketball game for 2 or 3 minutes on end. It just seems
Yeah,
like never ending. It should be, quick. You got three guys looking at it and a replay official, let's get this done really quick so we don't kill the flow of the game.
yeah, that's certainly the same over here. But because when it goes to an offside, it's they draw this line, and they have to, if your toenail is offside, it is offside, and people going, well, that's absolutely stupid, because it goes down to the tiniest of margins, and it says it for defenders it's really unfair, because you've got to be on point every single time, and if you for a split second, if you don't go up or go down, it's offside, and they're saying that's unfair. But yeah, sports is in technology, it's very very new. In sports like rugby and cricket, where they've had it a few more years, it's a lot easier. But I know rugby is not, it's not massive in America, is it?
No, no. When it's like the sevens tournament or something like that, it'll
Yeah.
it'll be televised. It'll be on ESPN, but it's definitely not that popular when it comes to sports in America.
Yeah, because a lot it's like NFL and rugby sort of get compared, and people. I mean, I've seen Americans say it's the soft version. We have the soft version of the NFL, and then English and other Europeans say NFL's a lot softer, because you have like a lot of protection, and in rugby you don't. It's very it's not, you don't see it often, but like you might go on TikTok and there might be a few people debating it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would say, rugby without pads, if you see those dudes, those Australian, New Zealand dudes, and
Yeah.
even the Englishmen, those giant human beings crashing into each other constantly,
Hmm.
that's definitely a sport I wouldn't take lightly.
Yeah, I played rugby. I played rugby for my school, and it's fun. It's a good game to play. It's rugby is very very respectful. As you don't badmouth the ref. You don't you sort of there are fights, but it's very after the fight you sort of shake each other's hand. But in football have a diving problem, and it does put a lot of people off, like people like Neymar, where they get touched and they go down. People call them like, "Oh, that's pussy. Like, what are you doing that for?" But then other people go, "Well, it is gaining an unfair advantage and it is cheating," but it does put a lot of people off. And I know the MLS in America is that getting bigger? Would you say?
It's definitely gotten bigger. I can definitely say that over the past decade or so.
Yeah.
I'm from Kansas City, which I mentioned earlier. We've had an MLS team for a long
Yeah.
time since I've been a kid. First, it was the Wizards, and they used to play in the NFL stadium in Kansas City,
Oh yeah.
Arrowhead Stadium, where the Chiefs played. And I could go there, and there'd be barely anybody there, and you could walk in whenever, and it's just really cheap tickets.
Hmm.
Just because nobody really knew about it, nobody was talking about it in the
Yeah.
sports scene. But now, these MLS teams over the past decade have started building their own independent stadiums,
Hmm.
and the stadiums are smaller, and they've really caught on.
Yeah.
The MLS stadium in Kansas City, I think it holds like 20,000 something people, but it's full all the time, and they've got their subcultures of fans in the stands. They've got certain sections like the KC Cauldron and things like that. So it's really grown fanaticism with people coming over from the Premier League as well. That's helped.
Yeah. I mean, isn't it Sporting Kansas City? It's the MLS team.
Yes, correct. Yep.
Yes. Now, don't tell me if I'm. I don't know if you might know. Did Didier Drogba play for them?
He did not play for Sporting.
Did he not?
Yeah, we've had some people come over, but we haven't had, those big international players. Like I know Rooney came over for a
Yeah.
season. Ibrahimovic obviously came over. Names like that, but we haven't had anybody big like that. It's been more of the smaller, South American players, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. I'm getting confused because there's some people call like the MLS sort of like a retirement league because they pay you good wages. But I've seen but there's a lot of very good players that went into the MLS. Like if I rattle off it, like Gerrard, Lampard, Pirlo, Zlatan, um, Drogba, and then a lot of players that went back. Like I know like Landon Donovan, Clint Dempsey, um,
Hmm.
and they were very good players in their day. Like Clint Dempsey was very good for Fulham, got them to Europa League final, which is for a club like Fulham, yeah, massive. But so we are getting away from the point here about basketball. But
No, you're good. I like soccer and American or football as well. So yeah, I don't keep up with it as much,
mhm.
just because I'm mainly American football, basketball, and baseball. But I do like soccer and football as well. So
Yeah. Do you going back to basketball? Do you have a favourite moment in the NBA? Sort of since from the years you've been watching it, that one moment you go to, if it like maybe you were at the game or it's just like a legendary moment.
yeah, I mean, one of my formative moments. A lot of the times, the answers for that question come from when you were a fan or when your fandom was
Yeah.
kind of growing. So mine was one of my first vivid memories was Tracy McGrady in Orlando when he played in Orlando.
Mhm.
He was just a really great player. But for like a singular series or singular moment, I remember 2011 NBA Finals when the Mavericks and Dirk Nowitzki
Mhm.
finally they beat the Miami Heat, which had LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh, the big three, when they
Yeah.
all got together for the first time. And the Mavericks were not supposed to win that series. They had Dirk Nowitzki, but everybody else was kind of a role player, and they just really played together as a team. And
Yeah.
Dirk Nowitzki would take the ball down the stretch, and it was just really fun to watch.
Yeah. I do know I know about that from researching the Mavs and would you say that's sort of a more of a team effort than sort of so, so they've got the big three, and would you say that's more of that helped them that all the role players became sort of like one good working unit, a well-oiled machine, than just three good players?
Yeah, definitely. They had played together a little bit as well, and with the big three coming together, that was their first really, win the championship season,
Yeah.
and they were still feeling each other out a little bit. So yeah, the Mavericks really knew what to do. And Dirk Nowitzki down the stretch when it was close games in the finals, they just gave the ball to Dirk Nowitzki and they pretty much said, get out of the way. He's either going to get fouled
Yeah.
and make his free throws, or he's going to get a bucket, and he did. He came through for him.
Yeah. Would you would you say Luka could sort of surpass him as sort of would you say a cult hero at Mavs?
Yeah, it's been interesting because Dirk Nowitzki, obviously German-born player, and then you've got Luka Doncic, who I believe is Croatian. So they're both international players, and
Yeah.
They came up right when Dirk was ending his career, riding off into the sunset. He pretty much passed the torch over to Luka Doncic because that was his rookie season. So it was an interesting transition, and I definitely think Luka could be that generational type NBA player.
Yeah.
So when I say that, I mean like LeBron James almost. Michael Jordan to LeBron James to Luka. He could be that kind of player.
Yeah.
Now that's a really tall task, obviously,
big
and I'm not predicting that, but he has the skills. He's on the trajectory right now as far as statistics, and he really cares about winning. Some people mistake that as, he's a whiner because when he loses, he does get upset, or he's smacked the scoreboard table, things like that,
Yeah.
throwing fits. But people, I think, mistake that as him whining,
Yeah.
which not so much. It's more of he legitimately wants to win every game he's out there.
Yeah, I think that's a very good characteristic because I know Luke. I think he was at Real Madrid before he was in the NBA, and as a football fan, Real Madrid are I would say they're one of the best teams in the world. They might be the best team in the world if you depends who you ask, with their sort of their history. And I only recently found out that sort of like their basketball teams were big. Cause I know Barcelona have one, and I've seen I think some Turkish teams are quite good, like Fenerbahce in Istanbul. They have some I know there's some players who go abroad. I think didn't one of the Bulls I forgot his first name. Didn't he go to Lithuania?
Yeah, they're an interesting family, but
Yeah.
they have three brothers. So they have Lonzo Ball, who was really good college player. He was the oldest of the three.
Yeah.
So he went to UCLA Division I college, and he played really well there and got drafted really high by the Lakers. And then after them, after Lonzo, I should say, they had Lamelo Ball, who's kind of the one he's not on the level of the other two.
Oh.
So they kind of forced Lamelo, which is the
Yeah.
youngest one, who's a rookie in the NBA now, and is the rookie of the year by far. He's been great in the NBA so far.
Is he at the Hornets?
Yes, he got drafted. Who Michael Jordan owns the Hornets now,
Yeah.
so it's been interesting dynamic there. But he's been instantly good. But at the time, LiAngelo wasn't going to make the NBA, the middle brother, and LaMelo was on the trajectory to make the NBA. So they went to Lithuania, played for a year, and then they came back,
Yeah.
made their own sort of league here in the United States, which didn't go so well. And so LaMelo's been interesting out of all three. I would say he's played for a different team every year since he was like 15 years old. So
Jesus.
yeah, he's been to Lithuania already. Now he's in the NBA finally.
Yeah. Would you say he has the highest ceiling, like the highest sort of potential?
Yeah, I really like Lonzo coming out of college, but there was this one game in the NCAA, the college tournament here,
Hmm.
where Lonzo Ball, his team was really highly ranked. They went against a really highly ranked Kentucky team, which had another point guard prospect named De'Aaron Fox. I don't know if you're familiar with him at all. He's in
I've
the
heard.
NBA now.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he's a good point guard in the NBA now as well, but they went up against each other. It was a really hyped matchup. Everybody expected Lonzo to win,
yeah.
but De'Aaron Fox just totally dominated him. He picked him up on defense from full court, and Lonzo Ball couldn't do anything. And from then, I was just like, I'm gonna take a
Yeah,
step back. I don't know if this guy's gonna be, the next Magic Johnson, which some people were calling him to be.
that's a big ask as well.
Yeah, but Lamelo Ball, I've been huge on from the very beginning. Part of that being just because of his journey to the NBA. He went to Lithuania.
Yeah.
He's played on all these different teams already. He's been He went to Australian League last year.
Hmm.
So he's been professional everywhere he's gone. He's basically been a pro since he was 15 years old,
Yeah.
and he just knows what to do. He really has that. There's the intangible. I'm sure you see this a lot in football as well. Intangible skill set from like a midfielder, so to
Yeah.
speak, where you just get them the ball and they can see the entire field, no
Hmm.
matter where they're from. They just see plays before they happen. Lamelo Ball definitely has that.
Yeah.
Uh, he grabs a rebound and you're just waiting for something exciting to happen. So I definitely think Lamelo Ball is the best out of all three.
Yeah, I've seen. I know where you're coming from. That sort of that player who, as soon as he picks up the ball, you just sort of stand up on your feet. You think there's something's that happen. In football, there's like a lot of players like that. I mean, like in football, for me, I mean, they get onto this in a bit. The greatest of all time. I believe in football, the greatest of all time is Lionel Messi. I think Ronaldo is second, but there have been players before him, but Messi is the greatest of all time. But would you say? I think you said it earlier. I think there's been the goat debate of Jordan and LeBron. Who is it? Who is it for you? Or was there another one?
I'm going Jordan for sure.
Hmm.
But this is going to be debated to the end of time
Yeah.
with Jordan and LeBron. And some people like to throw other people in there, but between Jordan and LeBron, it has to be between Jordan and LeBron. Some people throw Bill Russell in there
Hmm.
because he won 11 championships very early on in the NBA,
Yeah.
which I think is fair. Winning obviously matters, but skills wise, taking everything into account, the eras they played in.
Yeah.
Jordan and LeBron definitely 1 and 2 for me. LeBron could get there. He seems to be a robot because he's
Yeah.
36 years old and still
Doesn't look
playing.
it.
And yeah, he's in the MVP conversation every year. He just won a title again last year.
Hmm.
He's a front runner to be in the title conversation and MVP conversation again this year. So we'll see. Maybe he plays till he's 44, 45 years old and picks up a bunch more rings along the way.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, it's got to be Jordan. 6-0 in the finals. Totally dominated on the offensive and defensive end. People like to bring up, he didn't shoot from the outside like LeBron does. That's just the era they played in. They didn't
Yes.
shoot
Yeah.
from three. Yeah, I believe if Jordan played in today's era, he'd be shooting more threes. He'd be doing just fine. So
Hmm. Yeah, because I see. I do hear like a lot of debates about sort of people will like you said Russell, like Wilt Chamberlain, Abdul Jabbar, Larry Bird. Um, who do you think who is third for you? So would you go Jordan, LeBron? Who is that final like just misses the cut?
that's where it gets really interesting because the names you mentioned, I would say it's between Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Magic Johnson. Some people throw Kobe in there.
Yeah.
I don't disrespect Kobe in the least. I never, but I never felt like Kobe was. I know a lot of people have done this after his death, is kind of throw him up there, and
Yeah.
I trying to take that out of it. Obviously, it's a tragedy, but
Yeah.
I
You
wouldn't put
you
Kobe
got to remain
Bryant on.
respectful.
Yeah, yeah.
And you've got to realise that. So I do understand that people. I mean, a lot of people say like they should change the logo. They've seen a lot of debates how he should be up there. But he was obviously a fantastic player. But do you personally think that some people do sort of throw him up there because of, sadly, what happened earlier last year?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's a great player, and he always will be. But I grew up like pretty much in that era from when Kobe started in the NBA till his retirement. I kind of watched it all. I never felt like in the moment Kobe is the on the pantheon of five best players of all time. He's
Yeah.
really good and really great for his era. Obviously, a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he's got 5 rings, but I just never felt like he's on the level of LeBron or Jordan.
Would you? So going back to the question, I know didn't tell me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to get my facts right. Didn't Wilt Chamberlain was the only player to get 100 points in the game?
Yeah, this is way before games were televised and
Yeah, yeah,
everything was in black and white. So, but yeah, that's there's some legendary stories about Wilt Chamberlain, and then Bill Russell as well played in the same era as Wilt Chamberlain. So yeah, there's some legendary stories, and Bill Russell was a great defensive player, not so much offensive player like Wilt Chamberlain was.
yeah.
But Bill Russell was like an all-timer defensive player from all accounts, and there's crazy stories about him chasing a guy down from half court in like 5 strides and just blocking him at the rim. But it's hard because there's no video
No
of all this
evidence.
stuff.
Do you have to take it with a pinch of salt because of the era they played in?
Yeah, exactly. And there's only 8 teams for a lot of their era, so a lot of the stars got grouped together on the same team, and you only had to beat 7 other teams. So it's just completely different. It's really hard to compare them.
Yeah. So with knowing all those facts, can you safely say, who would you say is third then out of that top three?
I would put Wilt Chamberlain at number 3 and Bill Russell probably at 4, and then I'd go, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird right after them.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's. I mean, no, I don't think no. They will not get a time where someone will 100% agree with you, because there's always people who go like, well, I think Larry Bird should be third, and I think LeBron should be first, and I don't think he'll ever get sorted.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think with like the great players, of course eras play into it, but it's almost better to just put them into tiers. So
Yeah.
you have your top tier for me would be LeBron and Jordan, and then after that I'd probably put Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, all in that next tier, and then after that it just kind of keeps going.
Yeah. Yeah. With sort of like the all-time thing, what is your all-time team? So if I would give you a fresh NBA team, new team into the league, you are the head coach, and I go to you, so you can pick any player from any time, any history. Pick your whole team, your bench, everything you want. Who would be your sort of starting team?
Starters, point guard, I would have to go with Magic Johnson for sure.
Mm-hmm.
He's the kind of player who he's not necessarily a scorer. He
Yeah.
can score, but he was never an outside shooter by any stretch of the imagination. But he can totally run an offense. He can play defense. He can rebound. So he's going to be that facilitator from the point guard. Shooting guard, it's got to be Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
No other pick there for me.
No need the explanation for that.
Yeah, no explanation needed. Small forward, this is tough. I would classify LeBron James as a small forward, I think, in his prime.
Yeah.
So I'll go LeBron there. A lot of the same things as Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan. They can obviously score. Same with LeBron. He can score from anywhere.
Yeah.
He's become a little bit of a better outside shooter as his career has gone on, but he can play defense. He can crank up the defense when needed. Power forward. Ooh, this one is really tough. I'd like to put Larry Bird in there, but he's more of a small forward, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go with the interesting pick here. Let's go with Dennis Rodman. He's one of my favorites.
He's a character, isn't he?
Yeah, he's one of my favorites. I know he's not better than a lot of the players I skipped over there, but It's just a personal favorite. He doesn't need to score. I think we've got enough scoring with LeBron and Michael Jordan already.
He offers a lot more than what.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's crazy. Obviously, if you know anything about Dennis
Yes.
Rodman, he's not afraid to scrap or dive on the floor. All those sort of things that you need for a great team.
Yeah. I mean, he's friends with Kim Jong Un, and if you say that to anyone, he's a different character. Like I've seen, when I was watching the the Balls or the Michael Jordan documentary, however you want to look at it. That's sort of when I first watched that. I it would say it sort of got me into basketball. Sort of start off with because I sort of watched it and I really enjoyed it. I think it's a very good documentary, but I feel like it portrayed Jordan to be better than what he was than some. That's what I've heard from some people say because apparently he had he had a gambling problem, and some people said there's a conspiracy theory about how the reason why he left basketball is because he got banned because of gambling, but that's obviously a whole different topic.
Yeah, that's an interesting discussion. What you brought up there is totally true. It was obviously slanted towards Jordan,
Yeah.
and the reason for that being he wasn't going to be involved with anything like this unless he had total say so
Yes.
on
Yeah.
what got put out. So I think for what they had, they really got the most out of the documentary.
Mhm.
They got some good moments from Jordan in there, and being in America, Michael Jordan's like, he's one of the greatest athletes of all time, and he's
Oh
still
yes.
with us.
Mhm.
But you never really hear from him.
Yeah.
He doesn't really speak out. You hear from him obviously when something tragic happens, like Kobe Bryant dies. He's at the
Yeah.
funeral.
Mhm.
So, but he's a pretty private person for the most part, even though he owns the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah.
So that's been interesting to actually see him on the screen and actually get some of his thoughts.
Yeah. What did you think of the documentary? Did you enjoy it or?
Well, I loved it. I was a big Michael Jordan fan
Yeah.
already, so I was gonna love it regardless. I love Dennis Rodman and Scottie Pippen, that whole '90s Bulls teams. I love all those guys, so
Yeah.
I was gonna love it regardless. But I think it was a really great documentary. It it petered out a little bit towards the end. They really had me in the first couple
Yeah.
first like middle episodes. I would say were the best, and then petered out a little towards the end, but. I really enjoyed it, getting some introspection from not only Michael Jordan but the players around him.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it's very interesting looking. There's a lot of great stories. Um, so I think from two different ends. The one story I loved was Dennis Rodman. He left for like a 2 day bender. He went to Las Vegas. And then the other side of the story was Steve Kerr and his sort of journey to the NBA and what happened with his dad and stuff like that. I thought it was very really good put together, and obviously, like you say, it did sort of peter out at the end. But I really did enjoy it. It sort of got me into basketball, and I thought, I could actually get into this and sort of their sort of rivalries with like the Jazz, the Pistons, and sort of like when Rodman was Rodman. I think I want to say Isaiah Thomas. Yeah.
Yeah,
Pat myself on the back for remembering that.
yeah.
Um, and obviously like not shaking his hand, and obviously the dream team. And there's I can keep on going on. So many great moments, but what was your sort of favourite moment from the documentary? The sort of one thing that stood out was sort of like you always go look towards.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's pretty easy for me actually. There was I think it was maybe episode 4. It was one of the middle episodes where at the very end, Michael Jordan he was just talking. They asked him, what kind of I can't remember exactly what the question was, but
Mhm.
it was around the lines of does he care what people think about him?
Yeah.
Because the big thing with Michael Jordan is he's a competitor, just like Kobe. People say Mamba mentality for Kobe.
Yes.
He
Yes.
kind of took that a lot from Michael Jordan,
Mhm.
and he was an a-hole to the players around him.
Oh
He
yeah.
just was. You either got with him and you wanted to win, and you got on the train, and you did everything you could to win, which sometimes meant if you didn't get back on defense or you threw the ball out of bounds or you weren't playing to your potential, he was going to get after you. He was
Yeah.
going to try to get the most out of you.
That's
Out of
why he
you.
was so good.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why those teams were so good as well. They weren't the most talented teams ever. Some of the teams were really good. The one with, Dennis Rodman, Michael Jordan, and Scottie Pippen.
Hmm.
But, they asked him about that, and he started talking, and he actually started to choke up a little bit because it was so emotional for him. Just thinking about how many people, all the players around him, just, they thought he was an a-hole, and it bothered him.
Yeah.
But he knew he had to be that person.
Yeah, but I mean, that sort of thing he sacrificed people liking him to do you want to win, because although he did push a lot of people, and some people took it the wrong way. Some people like that sort of thing getting pushed, but other people need an arm around the shoulder. And like there's this story about, I think, didn't he punch Steve Kerr during
Yeah,
during the
yeah.
training?
There's a practice where he punched Steve Kerr. It went too far. Steve Kerr kind of played it off in the documentary.
Yeah,
He was mad about it. He didn't necessarily say it was okay or anything like that, but he said eventually they made up.
yeah. I mean, but he, for me looking in, I think Jordan is the greatest of all time for what he is and what he. I mean, I heard so someone said this. He said he left basketball, came back, and he was still the best, which is something like it's sort of mental to think, really.
Yeah, he was the kind of player that he could leave and go try to play baseball and then come back. You mentioned the conspiracy theory earlier. They shot
Yeah,
that down in the documentary, but we'll never really know.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised as well because like you said, he was sort of in control what put out. So if something made him look bad, then he sort of wouldn't have it in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but going back to sort of like the NBA now, do you have a favourite game this season? Sort of a game that sort of not you look back on, but sort of a game you watched or you sort of missed, but there were so many good moments in it. Like just this season.
Yeah, there was one. There's so many games every night; it's hard to keep up. But there was one I caught right in the fourth quarter. It was Portland Trailblazers and the Philadelphia 76ers.
Mhm.
And they're two pretty good teams this year. Dame Lillard is probably the
Oh
most
yeah.
clutch player in the NBA.
Mhm.
So if it's a close game in the fourth quarter, you know what Portland's going to do. They're going to hand the ball to Dame Lillard, and he's going to shoot a three from the logo or somewhere really deep. So,
Yeah.
and Ben Simmons from the Sixers, probably the leading defensive player of the year candidate,
Mhm.
was picking him up at half court, and he was doing a good job. He was in his face. He was doing everything he could, but Dame Lillard was just hitting shots, hitting
Yeah.
crazy shots. So any game like that has that flow at the end of the game where it's not interrupted by a bunch of fouls
Oh yeah.
or a bunch of replays. That's what makes the NBA great to me.
Yeah. Would you prefer a sort of a high scoring, free flowing game, or more of a tactical game, more of like where you can sort of because me personally, I'm sort of very 50-50 because in football, especially in the Prem, sort of the main the Premier League or the Championship, just the league below that, the sort of the main two leagues I watch. There, there's sort of three sort of ways you can go about it. You can either go very defensively on counter attack. You can either go sort of 50-50 where you sort of see how the game plays out. See if like are you on the referee's side? Is things going for you? The ball dropping for you? Or you get very good tactically passing and fluid teams. For example, Liverpool and Manchester City is that team where you watch it and you sort of, this is why you enjoy football. It's very quick, it's very good passing, good tacking. But then you get a team like Burnley who play in football. The 4-4-2 formation is sort of a old English style, rugged sort of a long ball to two massive strikers sort of thing. So would you say you prefer that sort of free flowing game, or you more of a can you sort of enjoy a tactical game?
Yeah, for the most part, when it comes to the regular season, it's definitely I prefer free flowing.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about the NBA is there's kind of tiers of teams that are contenders and teams that are not. So when you get to the playoffs, that's when the tactics really come in. The last 5 minutes of a game, what lineup? It might
Yeah.
not necessarily be the best five players on the court at the
Yes.
same time, but what is your best crunch time lineup as far as offense, defense,
Hmm.
guys that have been there before, guys that aren't afraid to take a shot,
Yeah.
all those sorts of things. So yeah,
Like the
those
clutch
that's
players.
what's interesting to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I see. I see where you're coming from there, because when in football it's the last 10 minutes of a game. So like the 80th minute, sort of managers sort of either do two things. They either might bring on another centre back, another defender, to sort of see out the game, or they might go for it. They might put an attacker on, and it is interesting to see. And in Premier League, it does keep on getting better. New coaches with different styles come in, and it sort of changes up the league. So they might bring a new formation in. But with coaches, and sort of a little segue, who's the greatest coach in the NBA now and all time for you?
They might actually be the same person for me.
Ooh.
Part of that I got to mention is because I wasn't, I'm not that old, so I can't speak to, obviously there's books written and you can watch a lot of the older games, but it really helps to actually see the coaches doing their thing. So for me, I would say it's one and the same. Greg Popovich from the San Antonio Spurs.
Mm-hmm.
He's been so consistent for so many years now, and even this year, they weren't expected to do anything. They weren't even supposed to be a playoff team. They've got a bunch of veterans that are getting paid too much money,
Yeah.
and they're way past their primes. But somehow they're right in the middle of the Western Conference playoff race, and I think a lot of that is due to the coaching, so
Yeah.
the day-to-day coaching, and just the culture that he's put in there.
Yeah. Would you say culture is a big thing in the NBA?
Yeah, I mean, it's harder now just because coaches and players move around so
Yeah,
much,
like you said, like players move from like two teams,
Yeah,
a team every
and
two
it's the
years.
same with coaches. So like if a coach, I'll just use Brett Brown from the Philadelphia 76ers, by all accounts he wasn't a great coach,
Hmm.
but a coach like that really doesn't have a huge chance to put in an infrastructure. And
Yeah.
I'll use Steve Nash in Brooklyn this year. If things go sideways in Brooklyn for whatever reason, they're doing really well right now, but if they don't get it done in the playoffs, they look really bad in the playoffs, or they choke coming down the stretch. Steve Nash might not have a chance to coach this team again. That's
Yeah.
how crazy things can be.
Yeah. I mean, in football, if you lose 6, 7, 8 games in a row, you lose your job. You like in there's a lot there's it sort of depends on the owner and sort of the clubs. A team, I use Watford as an example. They're a small team. They're a small team in Luton, and their sort of style is if they're doing bad, they could have 3, 4 coaches in a year, in a season. But a team like Liverpool, my team, we brought in a manager called Jurgen Klopp from Borussia
Mhm.
Dortmund. He's German, and he has a style called the Gegenpress, where this might go over your head, but it's just trying to sort of explain it as someone who doesn't watch football. But it's high pressing, really. So the front three players press the defence to force mistakes, and he has came into Liverpool 4 5 years ago, and he's installed a sort of way of thinking. Like last year, we got called the mentality monsters, because even if it's 1-1 or 1-0 down, we still play the same way. We have the same intensity, and the sort of the style we have sort of changes a player in their career. They sort of installed that, and they have that sort of in their locker. They know how to play that certain way, and sometimes it's hard for players coming from different teams. If you come from a defensive-minded team into an attacking, it might take you a few games, or it might take you a few months to sort of change that sort of that sort of mentality in your head. But I think in basketball, is there sort of that big difference? Do you see those players going from team to team and sort of struggling because they can't really adapt to the style, or is it sort of similar?
It's not so much the style, I would say. It's more of the fit with the other players on the court.
Mhm.
So you could be a player on a bad team
Yeah.
that scores 30 points a game or, has really crazy scoring numbers. And then all of a sudden you think, I want to go somewhere else. I want to be with another superstar so I can spread the love a little bit and maybe win a championship. And then they get there and they either can't adjust to that,
Yeah.
they're not ready to give up the ball, or the players just don't mesh together on the court for whatever reason. So it's not, I would say coaching's not as big of a deal over in the NBA unless they're able to create that infrastructure, like I mentioned with Greg Popovich.
Yeah.
He's earned that respect, so he's never getting fired. He has the job until he wants to retire. But a lot of coaches don't have that luxury. They can't say, well, I know I'm going to be terrible this year and maybe not be so good next year, but I'm putting an infrastructure in place. And instead, it's just a revolving door of coaches. I think of a team like the Minnesota Timberwolves. They've just been bad ever since Kevin Garnett left. They've been horrible, and it's just a revolving door of coaches because every coach that gets in there has a year or two, and if they don't get to the playoffs within that year or two, it's over.
Yeah, just they're sort of team. They're a sort of team like a Watford. They're sort of if it's not going well, they sack the manager, and then the board will go like, right, well, I want results. I want results now. But some clubs don't sort of realise that you need a man to sort of have that sort of day-to-day style and sort of sorry, something came into my head. Doc Rivers, right? For the life of me, I can't remember, but his Celtic team, they had a word that they lived by. Is this ringing a bell?
I don't remember a certain word. I remember Tom Thibodeau, who's a head coach now as well, was also on that staff. So they were really defensive minded team, and they were definitely willing to sacrifice to win.
Yeah, but I watched a documentary on Netflix that had him on it, and he talked about this sort of this word and it wasn't a word, it was a way of living, and their sort of their team sort of adopted that, and it was like togetherness sort of thing. But
Yeah. That's interesting. You see that you saw that in Boston, just like you mentioned, where you've got veterans that have had great success on their own, not so much winning, but they've been known as great players. So Kevin Garnett,
Yes.
Ray Allen, Paul Pierce was already in Boston, but he was known as a great player in Boston. But they weren't necessarily winning championships. So they all came together towards the end of their career. Were willing to sacrifice for each other,
yeah.
willing to play defense on both ends of the court, so not just trying to put up points. And they ultimately won championships.
Yeah, because there's different ways of going about it. There's obviously some people say your attack is your best defense, but then other people just want in like football, they just want goals. They just want a good game, because football, in my opinion, football is is stuck in an identity crisis for two reasons. Because they don't know what business they're in. Football doesn't know if it's in the sort of like the mainstream business of just getting money and just being an asset, or it's in the entertainment business. They don't know at the moment, because you get some people. So because at the lower you go, I feel football especially in England, you can go down to I can go down my road 10 minutes and there's a football stadium. It'll hold about 1,000 people, but it plays at a good level and in a semi-professional, and like the semi-professional scene in England is a massive part. And even the amateur, something we call the Sunday League, it's not a great standard, and like anyone can play. If you've never kicked a football before, you can join a Sunday League team, and it's a massive part of football, even though it's not the sort of the mainstream, because it sort of it brings everyone closer. I'm just wondering, does basketball have that sort of same not idea, but sort of where you can sort of just go there, play a game, and it sort of have effects on basketball as a whole.
Basketball's a little bit harder, especially in this past year. They've literally shut down gyms and everything.
Yes,
But
yeah,
yeah, so I know in California, which is a big state in the United States,
yeah.
they literally locked up gyms and they put blocks over basketball hoops outside so people can play pickup basketball.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I'd just say normally pickup basketball is a huge thing.
Mhm.
So there's basketball courts, at local parks or just in random places. Like
Yeah.
in California, there's parks in Venice Beach, things of that nature. So, and
Yes. Yeah.
especially with media and YouTube,
Mhm.
there's literally people who they don't play professional. They never played professional, but they're professional like pickup players, and
Yeah.
they have a huge following. So, yeah, it's grassroots. It's really interesting. There's what's called the AAU circuit. So
Yeah.
that is you've got your regular high school team, which is a school you go to, and you play for them. But then in the summer, where it really gets interesting and where recruiting really happens is on those AAU travel teams where they put all the kids that are really good together and
Mhm.
they travel across the country and play against each other.
Yeah. I mean, in something like that, football, it's not really like that, because you could get scouted, and if for like young as like four to like, I would say 12 maybe. Football scouts do go to Sunday league games. They do just go to their local park and they do watch these young kids. And I mean, you hear stories in every sport, like back in the 50s, where you and your mate would be kicking the ball against the wall, and then someone come around the corner, but you look pretty good. Do you want to play? Do you want to play next weekend? And then you're in the finals. And some of those weird stories back in the day. But in England, like, you do hear of like kids. I mean, kids aged 4 go into football academies until they are 16, 17, 18. Between the ages of 16, 17, 18. Yeah. Do you have? I don't know if it's true. Do you have the loan system in NBA?
No, we don't. Yeah, I'm familiar with it from soccer, but we don't have that over here.
Yeah, cause I think the loan system is very good, but I see how other sports don't adopt it. But because it gives young players good experience to play at a lower level. It might not be in the professional environment, but it might be semi-professional. But it'll learn you the basics. Um, but I can see why like other um,
Yeah,
sort of
it's
sports
interesting you
leagues.
mentioned that. I think eventually, with the way things are going with AAU basketball and high school basketball,
Hmm.
is you've actually seen it some places in America. They've done the academy system,
Yeah,
so it's more of a sports academy is where you go instead of going to regular high school. You just go to this sports academy where you play all year round
yeah,
and you learn the sport.
yeah. It's good to see that like it's universal. But could you think a loan system could be implemented into the NBA? Do you reckon it could work?
I don't know. I'd have to dig more into it with the economics of everything.
Yeah,
Right now, they're using sort of a G League system, which is like a AAA. So if you're either not good enough to go to the NBA quite yet, or you're a developmental player coming out of high school or college, you'll go to the G League. But it's not the best feeder system in the world. So I think there's definitely improvements to be made there.
yeah. Can you talk to me about the because I hear this a lot, and it's like D1 athletes and D2. What does that mean, and how far does it go? Is there like a D3, D4, or because I do
Oh
hear
yeah, there's a lot. So you can go. The main ones would be D1, which is your Division One.
yeah.
That's your big teams in college, like Kansas University, Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina. All those big teams are Division One.
Mhm.
And then you've got, I think the stat is about 1,700 scholarships are given out for D1 a year.
Yeah.
Of course, that you got 4-year seniors and transfers and things like that, but so that's a pretty small pool if you think about
Yeah,
it.
that is from. I'm thinking there's what millions of people who
Oh
go.
yeah,
Yeah, trying to get
e-
into it, and 1,700 is not a lot.
easily. Yeah, so you've got that, and then you've got below that Division 2, which is a step down, obviously.
Yeah.
Some players do get drafted out of Division 2. It's rare. It's really rare. But, if a player's doing really well at Division 2, they may get drafted in the NBA.
Yeah.
And then you've got Division 3, which is below that. That's, even a farther step down. I don't, off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody that's gone from Division 3 straight to the NBA. But
Yeah.
there have been players I know that have gone Division 3 and transferred up to maybe a Division 1 in their college career, or a Division 2, or gone to the G League and come up that way. So it's not impossible.
Yeah.
And
So.
then
Yeah.
even below that, you've got junior colleges, which are 2-year, where you go and get your associate's degree. And those exist mainly for the players that don't make grades in high school, or they get in trouble in high school,
Yeah.
or they get arrested in college. So a lot of junior college players are really talented. They have the NBA talent, but they get in trouble in college. Maybe they went to a Division 1 college and they got arrested, or they smoked too much weed, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So they get sent down and they start over at a junior college. They play for that junior college for a year or two, and then they go back to the Division 1. So
Yeah.
it's a really big system.
So, like you said, there hasn't been really a D3 athlete who's went from there to the NBA. But let's say I was a Division 3 athlete playing basketball. I had a really good season. Just from let's say that halfway through the season, I smashed it. I was getting like 30, 40 points a game. I did really well, and then is there a chance to enter the draft, or will there be a chance? Let's say a D1 sort of team will go that, oh, we'll take you on next year if you keep that up, then there's a chance to go to the NBA.
Yeah, I think the best shot would be either going to the G League or transferring to a Division 1 college. So it's Division 3, even though I'm making it sound like it's a bunch of scrubs playing, it's really not.
Yeah.
There's so many talented. There's literally, like you mentioned, millions of talented high school prospects coming out every year, and 1,700 scholarships get thrown out. So it's obviously there's a lot of talented players that get left out, and they end up going Division 2, Division 3, or going overseas. So a player has a few routes. I'd say Division 1 would probably be, if that option is available, the best option. Other than that, there are D3 players that go overseas and then come to the NBA that way, or some players just play overseas for their entire careers, and they may make millions of dollars playing in Australia or Lithuania or wherever it may be, and that they're happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, with the draft system, it's not used in England, or any other European leagues I can think of, but I think it could come out. I think if they make a system from like there is a lot of an academy. There are academies that are separate to football clubs where it might be 17, 18 year olds who will be released for something like stupid. But you're not tall enough. Your left foot is not as good as your right foot. Like blah blah blah. I think maybe this could be a system where those sort of players who get released from those academies can go into sort of a draft, and maybe sort of teams in the football league. So in the professional leagues in England, it'll go to Premier League, Championship, League 1 and League 2 are the professional leagues, and it could be like a really good youngster from a Prem team might be a starter for a League 2 team. I think it could work, but obviously the draft in America has been going on since I'm guessing since the start of the NBA.
Yeah, and the MLS over here, Major League Soccer,
Yeah,
does have a draft as well. But I think a lot of that was because it's just what we're used to in
yeah, it's
America.
a lot
You
easier
know,
to sort of get the system over.
yeah, it's not as big of a deal because the MLS is growing now, so they're grabbing those academy players that you mentioned. They're grabbing those overseas players now, so it's not as big of a deal as it was at the very beginning, where we were kind of growing our own talent from those Division I colleges here in America, and then they would get drafted to the MLS. But now we're grabbing players from all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it's a good system, but isn't it? I do get a little bit confused. I did watch the draft this year. I think I didn't Lamelo uh, second. I think was he
Yeah, he
second?
was second.
Yeah.
Or no, third.
Third.
Sorry.
I know. I can't remember who. For some reason, I can only think of him and this player called Toppin.
Yeah, there was Obi Toppin went to the Knicks. The
Yeah.
number one pick was Anthony Edwards out of Georgia, went to the Timberwolves,
Hmm.
and James Wiseman out of Memphis went to the Golden State Warriors at number two.
Yeah. What? How does? So right now, as a fan, can you safely go like this player will be number one, or do you have a sort of idea, or is it a certain type of fan who looks out for that?
Yeah, I mean, most fans, especially the younger fans, keep up with that,
Yeah.
those draft prospects and draft boards, and there's definitely a market for that.
Hmm.
But it's just so tough, especially in a draft like last year's, which we just talked about. There wasn't a consensus like this guy is the number one pick.
Yeah.
It was more of, well, these four guys could be pretty good, so you just have to do your scouting and
Yeah.
see what your team needs, and hopefully you draft the right one. So it just varies year to year, and some years it's just like you're cursed because you got the number one pick, but there's no number one prospect.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're just
That's
kind of, and then some years you get the number one pick and it's LeBron James. You just
so
never know.
exactly. Yeah. So it's a bit of a it's just up in the air. So is for your knowledge, is there a number one pick this year, or are you not sure?
Yeah, I would say the consensus number one overall right now has to be he's out of Oklahoma State. His name is Kade Cunningham.
Yep.
I don't know if you're familiar with him at all, but he's a freshman. A lot of the times, the number one picks, they only go to Division I college for that minimum 1 year. So they'll
Yeah.
play for 1 year and then they'll get drafted. And he's a freshman right now, so he's finishing up his season. He's going to play in the NCAA tournament, and then he'll be consensus number one overall, I think. Sometimes you do get a player that rises up the draft board late, but I don't see that happening this year.
Yeah. Who's he going to then, or who has the number one pick?
That's still to be determined. It's done through a lottery.
Okay.
I think right now, I'm trying to think of the worst teams in the league. It'd probably be the Timberwolves again. They'll be up there. But they have a little situation with their draft pick that they traded away a few years ago. So if their pick is not in the top three through the lottery, they give that pick to Golden State, which would be a total disaster and
Yeah.
horrible trade. But I would say Timberwolves, Detroit Pistons are up there, and Orlando Magic maybe. They're pretty bad this year.
So is it the worst? So it's the worst teams get the highest picks.
Yeah, and it's not done. Like I said, there's a lottery system, so the odds favor those teams that are bad.
Yeah.
So like if the Timberwolves were the worst team, they'd have the highest odds to get the number one pick. But it's never guaranteed.
Oh, okay. So for an off chance, so like the team who came first could get the number one pick, but it's a very low chance.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I think that is a good system because obviously because obviously so in sort of the best way possible, the worst teams get better, so it becomes more competitive.
Yeah, that's the thought behind it. So there's 14 teams that it's called the lottery.
Yeah.
So there's 14 teams. The 14 worst teams record-wise get thrown into that lottery. and then everything after those 14 teams is done by record. So your championship team, like the Lakers last year, they're going to draft last no matter what.
Yeah.
But those 14 teams that are the worst, they get thrown into the lottery because they're all pretty bad, and the worst team has the best odds to win that lottery.
Yeah, but you can also trade picks. Is that right?
Yeah, you can. There's certain rules, like I think it's called the stipend rule, where you can't trade a first-round pick 2 years in a row, something like that. So there are some rules put in place so a team can't just tank, or an owner can't just tank, or just throw a bunch of picks out the window if an owner's doing something crazy. But yeah, teams trade picks all the time.
Yeah, because I know. So it's because I know there's a lot of sort of times where don't players get traded maybe on the night or maybe a few days after, because I know some people get confused because I think Kobe got drafted by the Hornets but then got traded away, and then is that sort of a big thing, or is that only a couple of occasions?
No, that's a pretty big thing, and there was even one a few years ago with Luka Doncic and Trae Young.
Yeah.
So
That was Atlanta, was it?
yeah, Atlanta Hawks. They wanted Trae Young, and the Mavericks ended up trading. They drafted Trae Young, but they weren't drafting him to play for the Mavericks. They were drafting him because they had a trade in place already with the Hawks for the rights to Luka Doncic and some other things
Does
thrown
the player
in.
know that?
Yeah, usually when they draft him, they'll call him and tell him, it's kind of weird because they go, especially if it's a top pick like Trae Young, they'll go up on the stage and put on the Mavericks hat, even though they know they're never going to play for the Mavericks. They're going to the Atlanta Hawks. But yeah, the player knows that their rights are getting traded.
Yeah. Okay. So, but I mean, Trae Young is a good player. So but obviously you said earlier, Luka Doncic could be that generational player. Would you say, for example, for the Mavs, do you think that was sort of the best thing possible?
Yeah, definitely. It was an interesting draft because the number one overall pick, the Phoenix Suns had it, and their coach was actually Croatian, I believe, at the time. So everybody was thinking, obviously they're going to draft Luka Doncic. Yeah, obviously they love Luka, and they got this coach for Luka, and they're going to draft Luka. But DeAndre Ayton ended up playing really well for the Arizona Wildcats, Division I college, and he ended up rising up the draft board and took over that number one pick. And then after that, the Mavericks had their eyes set on Luka Doncic, and fate would have it they ended up with him.
See, for me that's obviously good, but then I sort of say like I am supporting Dallas for Luka, but then I've said to myself, so like when he leaves, that could be at the end of his career, it could be next year. We don't know how it works, but I've said to myself, right, I'm going to be a Mavs fan now, and I'm going to learn. Because I think the worst thing possible is a plastic fan, someone who will jump between team to team, because of a player, and who's sort of when they've got two jerseys on, as soon as they lose, take it off, and got the winners on, that sort of thing. But but for someone like you, you said you're a fan of the league. You like the game of basketball for what it is, not because of a team.
Yeah, exactly. And when it comes like playoff time, I'm not necessarily rooting for one team to win over another. I'm rooting for probably the best storylines,
Yeah, the best story. Sort of.
Yeah, just hoping we have a really good series, really.
Yeah. I mean, we're going for a long time. I've got a question. I've got two questions for you just to end it off. What has been in your lifetime the worst and the best series?
Worst series. Worst ones are tough. There are a lot of NBA Finals series which, for whatever reason, the teams just, even if it's a close series numbers wise, like the teams are tied 3-3 and it goes to a game 7.
Yeah.
it may be, those 3 games that team won were blowouts, and the three games that the other team won were blowouts. So it wasn't really that close, and you don't
Yeah.
really know what to think. I can't think of one specifically that comes to mind for that. But that kind of situation does happen. And then you get times where, like the Philadelphia 76ers with Allen Iverson
Yeah.
against the Lakers with Shaq and Kobe, and they were in their prime. It just wasn't fair. It was just
Yeah.
overmatched. And Iverson played as well as he could. He even won the first game pretty much by himself. He scored like 40-something points, and he went to LA and won game one. And then after that, it was just all Lakers.
Yeah.
So series like that, there are series that get overmatched. So I'll do the Lakers versus the Nets or the Lakers versus the Sixers in the early 2000s for worst series. For best series, this one, 2016, when the Cleveland Cavaliers were down 3-1 and they came back and
Yeah.
beat the Golden State Warriors. The games weren't necessarily the best.
The
All the
story
games,
was
yeah,
the
there
big
were
thing.
there were some blowouts in that series, but when it came down to Game 7, it wasn't the prettiest game in the world. But the moment LeBron blocks Andre Iguodala from behind, and it's known as the block now. That was a
Yeah.
great series to watch.
Yeah. And I just got one question for you personally before we leave off. I asked this for all my guests, but how do you want to be remembered?
Ooh, that's a deep one. How do I want to be remembered?
Yeah, that could be it could be mainstream or could just be friends or family.
Yeah, I would say never giving up, definitely working hard for what you want is something I want to. I think my friends and family know me for that, and
Yeah.
I would definitely hope I pass that on to my friends and family as well. As you know, it's nothing's easy. Just like I'll use a podcast for example. You're taping a podcast right now. No offense to you, but you're not Joe Rogan or you're not,
No.
Oprah. Yeah,
Yeah.
Oprah Winfrey right now, and I'm the same way. It's not like I've got millions of followers. I just turn on my podcast and everything's good and I'm making money. You gotta actually work at it, whether it's a
Exactly.
hobby or whether it's you doing it as your job. It's just something that you have to actually put effort into, and just because it's not going great right away doesn't mean that it can't over time. You just need to find that angle.
Yeah. That's good, mate. So he's just like a hard worker and someone who just doesn't give up, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, mate. I mean, I find this chat has been really interesting. It's been an hour and 23 minutes, but it feels like 5 hours because for personally I've really enjoyed it. I think for someone who doesn't really know a lot, I feel like I sort of understood now like the draft and stuff like that. So it's been great, mate.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
No worries, mate. Okay.